rather tight schedule in front of us today at this conference, at this Climate Neutral Cities conference. And we have three objectives for us: to learn how to live sustainably, to find out how to design better cities, and to solve the climate crisis. So simple enough, right? Anyway, I'm your host for today, the moderator. My name is Andrei Liimets. And as I already mentioned, we all joking aside, we actually do have a very tight schedule ahead of us, which will hopefully give you both some food for thought, as well as some practical examples, both from Tartu, as well as Tampere, as well as other places. We have three sessions coming up. The two of them will have both some introductory presentations as well as discussions, and after lunch we'll have a site visit, so more on that later. The first session today will focus on sustainable development, and the second one, after a small coffee break, will focus on livable cities. But before all that, we do have some opening remarks. So without further ado, I will invite the first speaker here. And by the way, I do have a small mistake I have to recover. Last time I had to moderate an event which was jointly organized by Finnish and Estonian people. Then I managed to mispronounce some Finnish names. So today, to level the playing field, I will intentionally be mispronouncing Estonian names as well. So sorry in advance for that. So, but first of all, it's my pleasure to invite here the Mayor of Tartu, Mr. Urmas Klaas.
Dear friends, Honorable Ambassador, Your Excellency, Honorary Consul, Mayors, Deputy Mayors, dear friends from Tampere, from Oulu, dear Tartuvians. I am very pleased to welcome you all to Tartu and celebrate the friendship between Tartu and Tampere. This is a very important occasion. 30 years, friendship, cooperation between the two has been so very important. But also, I am very glad to have delegation from Oulu here, and we can celebrate also European Capital of Culture, Tartu 2024 and your city 2026. Talking about friendship and cooperation between Tartu and Tampere, we know that a lot of our delegates have been visiting Tampere and learned a lot, and hopefully Tartu has been also a source of inspiration for Tampere and for your people. Today we are here to talk about the mutual challenge we are facing, which is global warming and climate change. This is something that involves a lot of aspects of our cities, and we need to be thinking about new smart ways how we build our cities, how we move, and how we preserve nature and also biodiversity. Dear ladies and gentlemen, change is possible only if we cooperate with the community, with our people, with our citizens, our companies and universities. We are really lucky cities in that sense that the University of Tartu and other 10 universities are located here in Tartu. The oldest one, the most important University of Tartu, is founded by King Gustav II Adolf in 16 1932 already. And since that is Tartu recognized and well known as smart city. And of course, we know that the city of Tampere has also very high level university and other institutions. And I am glad that our university and universities, they have really good cooperation between universities as well. So, and it is also important to understand that the actions for a better climate are the same as for a better living environment, for a better city. In Tartu, as probably you know, we call those actions arts of survival. Arts of survival is also the artistic concept of Tartu as European Capital of Culture in 2024. The last years, since the COVID crisis and the terrifying war in Ukraine, have put us all to think more and more about survival in its broadest sense. Today, we all understand that a sustainable future is stronger in the face of any crisis, and we need smart solutions and innovation to build a strong community. As you can see, I really will underline the word community, our people. The challenge of climate change and challenges in national security affect us all, and in order to face the challenges, we need to cooperate and exchange ideas. And this is really very important time when Finland is going to be member of NATO, the same situation with Sweden, and we all know, especially here in Estonia, how important and necessary it is for our region and for Europe. Dear friends, Tartu is a city of good thoughts, and Tampere is the sauna capital of the world. And of course, the best ideas come from a good sauna, or after good sauna. So we need the great cooperation between our two cities to keep the good thoughts coming. So, more saunas, more good thoughts for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for these kind words, Mr. Mayor, and we will now or continue the discussions in the sauna next door. So let's go. Rather not, but I do think we have a new possible tagline for Tartu. Tartu, smart since the 17th century. But up next, it is my pleasure to welcome here the Deputy Mayor of Tampere, Mr. Aleksi Jänti.
Daamid ja härrad, kallid külalised, kallid sõbrad Tartust. Austatud linnapea Klaas, suursaadik Vasara. Ladies and gentlemen, others, dear friends, is lead Mayor Klaas and Your Excellency Ambassador Vasara. I have a great pleasure to give opening remarks for this fantastic event on behalf of the city of Tampere. This year, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of twin city relations of Tartu and Tampere. The relationship between our cities have always been exceptionally warm and close. I'm not being only polite in saying that it has always been like working with true friends. We have experienced and accomplished plenty of things together since 1992. Perhaps it would be easier and faster to mention things that we haven't done together yet. To take an example, it feels like yesterday when Tampere Maja was opened here in Tartu. But to be honest, yesterday turned into 25 successful years very quickly. In these 30 years of friendship between our cities, the world around us has taken many twists and turns. Sadly, also in very dramatical ways, as we have witnessed in recent months. We are living through globally turbulent times in many ways. And these times call for secure and trustworthy partners first and foremost. Cities play a key role in finding innovations and solutions to tackle global challenges. But no one can be successful working on these topics alone. So we need other cities. We need cooperation, and true friendship is the great basis for all of that. The cooperation between cities has changed over the years and taken new forms. For us, it has always been very special. How easy and smooth it has been to jump into new openings with you here in Tartu. Hopefully, EU mission of 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030 also brings new forms of collaboration between cities, all cities. In 2024, Europe is lucky to have Tartu as an outstanding European capital of good culture, as we have all 2026. Actually, I have to mention that I have this advertising T-shirt as well, but I forgot it at home. I don't know the reason. We sincerely hope that Tartu 2024 also brings a new dimension and a new project between cities and cultural actors. Culture has always been an important factor in twin city relationships. Culture brings people together and builds bridges. Tomorrow, we are extremely happy to participate in the release of the friendship mural in Söprussil. The mural created by young people from both cities is a perfect example of the spirit of co-creation and collaboration that exists between our cities. Dear friends in Tartu, thank you for organizing this amazing event, including Climate Neutral Cities Conference today and long-awaited Suomi-päivät tomorrow here in the city center. I wish you all a very pleasant day and weekend here while we enjoy the discussions, events and our long-standing friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And now, to round up the opening remarks, please help me welcome the Ambassador of Finland, His Excellency Vesa Vasara.
So, lugupeetud linnapead, mu daamid ja härrad. We are here to celebrate the 3 decades of cooperation between Tampere and Tartu, and I do recognize some friendly spies from Oulu as well, so thank you for the chat yesterday. Very elevating. My own history with Tartu goes back to the late 1980s, so frankly speaking, I do not remember the year. For 2 days I've been trying to recall it. When was it? It may have been 1990s, the early days. But I have visited Estonia also during the Soviet time, so I have some perspective. But anyhow, I was here as a young student to gather material for my magistrate, my degree, magisterarbeit in Kirjanduse Museum. So they had some papers there that didn't exist in Helsinki. I lived in Noruse, Seitse, together with few equally that time young Estonians, so grandsons of those, the ones who had to flee in front of the Soviet occupation, väliseestlasi. But many of them I still know, and I only cherish warm memories from that time and from the city of Tartu. But since I have an historian's perspective to societies, during all these decades, it has been such a joy to witness, sometimes from far away, how Estonia and Tartu has taken such giant steps forward and left sort of the shadows of the past behind and returned to its European traditions. And not getting, I don't mean this that one would have got stuck with the traditions, but with orienting itself to the future as well, and meeting the challenges that face us all in Europe and globally too. And first and foremost, I'm referring to climate change and its very negative impact on our lives. Tampere and Tartu have joined the European Union mission 100 climate neutral and smart cities. We will soon hear more about this, so I won't go there. But I only want to make the point that this kind of action is of vital importance, since cities are a home to 75% of EU citizens. They consume nearly as much of the energy, and we've all followed the discussion about energy prices and what it does to our societies. Energy is used as a weapon nowadays. And the citizens also produce roughly as much CO2 emissions. So it's the central point is that without active role of the cities, climate crisis cannot be solved. And in this connection, it's also important to note that public and private partnership plays a central role as well. So basically the authorities, be it central administrations or local administrations, they take care of the political decision making, they regulate, they control, but the private companies are actually the ones who do the job. And this doesn't have to mean basically a negative thing, because private enterprises are so effective. So green transition, rohepöörde, is an investment. It is very good business and not expenditure in that sense. Our event today is for celebrating the partnership of Tartu and Tampere, but in a smart way, so to speak. Smart cities, smart citizens make wise decisions, and I wish you all a lot of wisdom and an interesting seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And once more, Urmas, Aleksi, Vesa, thank you very much for these very warm opening remarks. And you have also managed something that happens very seldom at these conferences. We are ahead of the schedule. So sustainable usage of time, that's very good. But now it's time to get on to our first session, where we will focus on sustainable development and how to get the local community behind that. So now I will invite here our first speaker, who will give a brief presentation about the green transition in Tampere. So please welcome Kari Kankala, the Director of Environment and Development in Tampere.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. Always a pleasure to return to Tartu. And especially the topic of this seminar is kind of, at least to my understanding, it popped up when we were talking with colleagues from Tartu on applying for the 100 Cities mission, the city mission, and then after we both were selected, we had a chat and kind of came up with the idea that might be a good way to celebrate this in a conference and when celebrating the 30 years of friendship between the cities. Let me first thank all the people who have made this presentation. I'm just more or less a talking head. This is a slide I always like to include in the beginning. This is why we do it. It's not just the climate, it's the whole better world, better society for our children. I'll be briefly touching the national level green transition strategies, then what we do in Tampere, and a couple of cases. In the national level, Finland, as any other European Union country, have done their recovery and resilience strategies, and there are the goals of our national government, and then there are 4 focus areas in this study. Excuse me. And I have decided to highlight both in the national level and in Tampere the circular economy. The national goals and actions, they are as wide as anything, from clean energy production, circular economy, especially looking at the construction sector, and then infrastructure in mobility, and also nature-based solutions for adapting to climate change, such as stormwater management, etc. And the national government of Finland launched its circular economy strategy about a year ago. And they are now gathering together the cities, regions, companies to form a kind of Green Deal on circular economy. And this work has now just started, and we'll be thrilled to see what that brings us to. And it's supposed to be aiding the national goal of being carbon neutral by 2035. The nation wants to be carbon neutral 2025. We naturally want to top that a little bit in Tampere and want to be carbon neutral by 2030, but so is Oulu has the same target. The city of Turku does it even better. 2029 is their target. So they claim it's some year of celebration in Turku, but no, they're just being nasty to the rest of us. We have to say from Oulu that it's 2035 for us, so you are better than. Oh, okay, so you go with the national government. Okay. In the EU green policies that have been put in place during the past few years, there are 2 statements or slogans that I have taken. Do no significant harm and just transition. In a country like Finland, which is sparse, in a city like Finland, Tampere, which has a city center and then a lot of rural areas, a just transition is not a trivial thing. It's not also a trivial thing if you look at how the climate activities currently are divided between those who have and those who have not. In other words, it's a social issue as well. So in what we do, we try to do things in such a way that the actions would be just and would do no significant harm. So where are we, and what do we mean by carbon neutrality? We say that from 1990 levels, we reduced the carbon emissions by 80%, and then somehow, we don't know yet how, we compensate for the remaining 20%. And so far, so good. The solid line, the pillars show the absolute reduction, and the solid line shows the per capita reduction in emissions. Per capita, doing well as the region is growing, but that's not what we're counting. We are counting the pillars, the absolute. And as the region is growing, we have, as you notice, we have difficulties in keeping the reduction going down further and further. On the right, you see how the sources of the emissions are divided. Naturally, as everywhere in the north, heating of buildings. But that, in a way, is not a problem. Transport is the toughest one for us. That doesn't seem, the emissions from transport doesn't seem to go away. This is just for the energy guys in the audience. It shows that on the left here you see where the electricity, where the energy comes from, and then on the right you see where the energy is being used. And heating of buildings and services, construction, etc. This is why I'm not worried about the heating of buildings. The Tampere Energy Utilities roadmap to carbon neutrality is here, and they will reach the 80% of green energy or from renewables by, I'd say by 2024. And then the further 10% by 2030, and then the rest never. But this may now change due to the energy crisis, especially in Europe. When we started our climate work, we started it by having it very strongly in the city strategy, in the mayoral programs, in all the key strategic documentation of the city. That gives us the backbone to work and operate. And when we have our own policy tools, we have international commitments like the 100 Climate Cities, Green City Accords, Covenant of Mayors that many cities are part of. But when we do the roadmaps for the carbon neutrality, we don't do, the environmental unit doesn't do them. It's the actual units themselves who do their roadmaps. They list their actions, they list their items, they list their goals, what they want to do and how are they going to receive it, and which year what by 2030. Would be much easier if the environmental unit would just do it and say that, okay guys, here's the plan, go execute. But and that is what some of the units wanted us to do. And we said, you go, you do, it's in the strategy. So, and we have been very successful in this. Basically the carbon neutrality and the climate work is now part of everyday work of all the units of the city. And we do also have, we had one, and now we have another one, program on, focus program on carbon neutrality, part of the strategy. And now we are looking at the consumption, the next coming 3-4 years, consumption and how the citizens would change their mobility habits or their consumption habits. And this is something that we are, at least I'm expecting much from, if we will be able to find ways to accelerate the change. So what we do further, this is an introduction to the climate budget. We use the city plans, we use the city processes, we use the city organization that is already in place. We do not have any climate action groups. We do not have any climate this or that in the city organization. We have them incorporated in the existing plans. For example, we don't have a separate climate adaptation plan. We include that in the city risk management plans and processes. So, and most of the things will be taken care of there. Okay, briefly, a couple of things. Climate budget. We have, this is now the third year, next one being the fourth, that we have a climate budget in place. We basically have copied what Oslo has done and then done some development there. But the key thing is that the environmental unit doesn't ask for these things. It's now when we are currently doing the budget for 2023, the financial department, they ask for what is the running costs, what are the investment costs for 2023 from each unit, and then they ask what is your climate budget for 2023. So basically, when the financial department asks, you answer. When the environmental department asks, you may answer. And we have kind of developed the budget so that first we had just the emissions, then we have emissions, actions, and euros. This year we also have included that we are looking a little bit about the impact, etc. So we try to develop this to be a tool, and then yet the reporting of all these things we try to do so that it's nothing added to the normal strategy reporting of the units. So it's easy for the units as well. And this just give you an example that what one of our first climate budgets look like. You have the running year, then you have the whether these actions that are proposed, whether they are within the limits, and then you have a kind of running 5-year budget. In this, as running 3-year budget, as you have in our also actual financial planning. Okay, finally, circular economy. We have finally probably one of the last larger cities that has a circular economy strategy in place. Most of the cities in Finland have had it for several years. And we have done this together with the regional organizations, and I'll be showing you a couple of things we do in Tampere and then some platforms. We have a novel brownfield development, an area which used to be a factory area. Now it's going to be an area for 25,000 people and about 10,000 jobs, and should be completed by, well, should have been completed by 2040, will be completed sometimes in the 2040s. The planning principles for this region are novel. The bullet point, the one but last, that says that it produces more than it consumes, or that it's the CO2 negative area. How are we going to do that? We are working on it. But these are the planning principles, how the region has been planned and will be planned. And just to give you a couple of examples on what we have done there. We've been working on energy storages, on biochar production, that is getting one way of getting towards the CO2 negative thing, maybe carbon capture technologies as well. There's sustainable urban food production, and there's mobility as a service pilot. So a lot of things that are nice. They are in the piloting phase now. We'll see what we will be able to incorporate in the final area. The other examples that we do is we are doing a regional wastewater treatment plant that is self-sufficient, will be self-sufficient in energy. In other words, it'll be using its bio-waste as the energy source. The way it's kind of smushy there is the reason is that because it's inside the rock bed and not on top of that. We have a new bio-waste treatment plant. The regional bio-waste probably won't be enough. We are currently gathering it from also from outside of the Tampere region or the Pirkanmaa region. This is a strategy picture of one of the platforms, Eco3 platform in the neighboring town of Nokia. I want to include that because I think this is currently a very good picture of showing how clear the vision and actions of circular economy are currently and how they are understood. In other words, there's a lot of fuss and buzz about carbon neutrality and circular economy and how circular economy will solve everything. But is circular economy anything but think what you're doing, try to minimize the use of materials, etc. For example, something that companies have been doing for ages. So it's a new buzzword, but it may produce a good meaning. This just another picture of the Eco3 areas to show you that there is actually some action and some companies and all that going on. We have a waste incineration plant in place and have had that for the past 5-6 years. And that was started when the European Union had the directive that closed all the waste dumps in European Union 2016. And this is something that has been very successful and contributes nicely to the carbon neutrality of the region. And the pink one in the background is the city area, you see the factory on the upper left corner. That's the where we have the power plant, and this one is on the other side of the border in the municipality of Kangasala, and they're going to have actually a circular economy park for companies. So it'll be interesting to see where that takes us and how that develops in the next few years. And there are the city is a major hub of metal shops, metal companies, construction companies. And there are hundreds of companies who have some angle in the circular economy. And the city development agency is looking at how the industry is and what they could do with the industry in getting both basically the twin transition, the digitalization and the greening of the manufacturing industries. This was the run-through of the what I want to tell you of the what the city is doing, how we are doing these things, etc. And it's a pleasure to be talking about this here, especially that now that we are both in the city's mission together. And then we do have a joint circular economy project, also Treasos European-wide projects that we are both cities are part of. So thank you all, and looking forward to hear what the Tartu is doing. Thank you.
I think we do have time for a couple of questions, if Kari is open to answering them from the audience. Is there anyone who would like to ask anything? I think we have one microphone on the floor, so please just raise your hand and I'll send the microphone to you. Would anyone like to ask anything? We did have quite a lot of information there. So the first question.
I'll break the ice. This incineration of waste, if my memory serves me correctly, so in the capital region of the Vantaa incineration, they produced half of the Vantaa electricity by burning the capital region waste. This may be wrong, but this kind of a picture I've had in my head. So the question is that when you burn the Tampere part of the waste, and so how much of the electricity production you roughly produce?
We basically, and my colleagues may correct me if I'm wrong, I understand we basically use that for district heating. And the percentage of, I have no idea, but I'll tell you by the coffee break.
So now the ice is broken. Is there anyone else who would like to ask something? Again, just raise your hand, yes, please.
Thank you. You told that you have kind of told all the other departments that they should kind of put the goals. And what is doing then your department now? What is the task of environmental department?
You actually pinpointed. We want to have just an easy life. We are basically we are advising them, we're supporting them, we're providing them with help. Our experts are helping them in, say, calculations, or if they're more complicated, in getting correct consultants. We're coordinating the citywide plans. We are doing all kinds of support actions. But the main idea is that we are not the action group, we are the supporting group.
I think we can take one more question. Yeah, please.
My name is Päivi Laila. I'm a mayor of Oulu. As we know that so many cities have this kind of budget in climate budget in normal budget, but you have done climate budget too, and so it is mean that you can tell that how important these things are, and so it is necessary to tell that we have a own budget for this kind of jobs. So how many times you report this all, what you have done and what kind of thing you have do much more better and so on to the council?
The reporting is done, well, the financial reporting is done, I believe, monthly. But we report the climate budget annually. And it also includes not only the city itself, but also the whole city group, in other words, also all the companies. And we had a chat whether we should have these, that these numbers that are mentioned in the budget, whether they should be kind of locked, that you can't use that money for anything else if you don't do that. That we didn't want to do. So there's still room for the units to decide during the year what they are going to do. But basically the idea was that you make it visible and you make and as the organizations have, or units have created their own roadmap, you make them do that also in numbers and in euros. That was the main idea behind the climate budget.
So thank you very much for the questions. And one more round of applause to Kari, please. So now let's hear how Tartu is doing in terms of green transition. And please help me welcome here Tartu City Government's climate specialist, Kaspar Alev.
All right, good morning. Nice to be here. Hope you like being in Tartu as well. Nice weather this morning, bit brisky, but nice sunshine out. Thank you, Kari, for this great presentation. I hope I'm giving at least an equally good presentation. I feel the pressure now. So many great examples. Looking forward to speaking to you later about the budget. But before I go into specifically in Tartu, I would just like to put Tartu into perspective in the world, maybe. Right next to Tampere there, you know, this small corner. But putting into the world perspective, I'll just quickly go over when we talk about climate change, climate neutrality, where do the emissions in the world come from? So you can see a quarter of emissions in the world come from producing electricity. And then another quarter comes from producing the food we eat. And here's a nice little sweet piglet, because most of the food we produce goes to producing food for our cows and pigs. Then 20% of emissions comes from all of the stuff that we produce in the world, whether it's this table, this microphone, this computer, this remote control. That's 20%. And around the world, 15% of emissions come from transportation, the way we move ourselves around or the products that we produce. Some of the emissions come from the buildings, and let's not make this complicated. This is emissions that are the fuel that is used in the building, so that's why it's this small. And then there's the last 11%, which is really difficult. It's all the emissions that we create when we produce the fossil fuels that we use in everything else that I just showed you. So that's the world. I'll try to keep it in mind. Maybe it's good knowing. In comparison, what Estonia looks like. A lot of our emissions come from all of the energy that we produce. So that's electricity and heat. So that's over 60%. Around 1/5 of our emissions comes from transportation. So you may note that it's a bit higher than the world average. That's because we're doing much better than the average person in the world is doing, and we travel much more than maybe an average person in the world does. For food, maybe we produce less food. It doesn't mean that we're more fit or that we eat better than the rest of the world. It's just maybe we import a lot of food. There's a very little industry because Estonia isn't an industrious country. And then there's some waste. So a lot of it comes from energy because Estonia's electricity usually is pretty dirty. And a quick overview of what's happening in Tartu. This is very simplified, obviously. I've left something out, but this is to make a point. A lot of our emission comes from all the electricity that we consume here in Tartu. The national energy mix is not good. You can see 2017, I would say roughly 70% of the emissions came from electricity. By 2020, thanks to all the clean energy that we imported from Finland and maybe Sweden and Norway, and we didn't produce so much local dirty electricity, our emissions significantly dropped. At the same time, you can see that emissions from the heat and emissions from transportation, they stayed roughly the same throughout the years. What I'm trying to say here is that it's really difficult for Tartu to control the emissions from electricity. We produce very little electricity here in Tartu, and it's mostly the national mix that affects us. Thankfully, the current government has said that by 2030, Estonia should produce as much electricity from new renewable sources as we consume annually. So hopefully that will help us along really well. It's just that the transportation and heat is something that we have much more influence over than the national electricity mix. And to put these numbers into perspective, from 2010 to 2020, you can see these. The blue is again electricity and how much it affects the Tartu's emissions. And there are some goals there. You can see our previous Energy Action Plan goal, which we reached very much thanks to the national electricity getting much cleaner. And to be honest, our next climate action plan, which we started to write in 2018, it turns out that thanks to the national electricity mix, by 2020 we almost reached the goals by the time of the plan. And Fit for 55 is not also too far away. So we have to boost, we have to turn up our but our ambitions, obviously. And that's why we have joined the 100 climate neutral cities with Tampere. We had good cooperation with Kari, consulting back and forth, how to present, what to present, what to turn our attention to. But when we talk about climate change, there's a few things I would like to note is that climate change is really unfair. Like we saw with the COVID crisis, this type of crisis, they affect the ones that are at most danger, whether it's the poorest parts of our society, whether it's people with not so good health or health issues. So not everyone is affected equally by climate change, and vulnerable members of the society are affected more. So if we deal with climate change, it's just not the survival of our Estonia, Tartu, our people, but it also means that by fighting climate change, we also have to increase equality in our society, because it's pretty easy to buy yourself out of emissions. Just buy an energy-efficient house, energy-efficient electric car, or whatever, and your emissions are zero, and climate change won't affect you too much. But there's another problem with climate change. It's that we have to act now in order to avoid these catastrophic effects of climate change. So we have to act really quickly and really severely for something to not take place. So we have to run really quickly just to stay on one place. And if we succeed or not will only appear in statistics. And it will only appear in statistics in 30 or 50 years' time. So I think I won't be here anymore in 50 years' time, I'm pretty sure of it. So should I succeed in my work or not, there will be nobody telling me goodbye, thank you. So it's a really difficult problem, and it's a long view problem. So what would be the answer? I think for Tartu, it's a very simple but a very difficult answer, is that to fight climate change, we need a better Tartu, a better city for our people, for it to be equally good for everybody in the city. And yeah. So what do I mean when I mean better Tartu? I think of better homes, I think the better mobility, and I think better public space or better city. So better homes, I can show you these buildings have been renovated already. It's an old picture. But this is roughly where Tartu people live in, these type of Soviet-era buildings. And to just give a little background for our Finnish colleagues, in Finland, the cities own a lot of the residential property and you provide rental services to people. In Tartu, it's quite opposite. The city government only owns just a little bit of residential property and we rent it for people with specific needs, whether it's social or it's some mobility issues. So buildings, apartments are privately owned and it's quite a challenge for the owners of the apartments and owners of these buildings to renovate the buildings themselves. So to reduce energy consumption, have a healthy home, all these benefits. But thankfully we have been working on it for 5 years and are working on it at the moment pretty extensively. These are already renovated buildings. This is our success story project Smart in City. Some of you will be going to the tour after lunch and you will probably, not probably, but most definitely visit some of these buildings and our guide Andra will give you a better overview of what's been done there. But our goal for 2030 is to provide better homes for our citizens, to help them renovate their own homes. So this is quite ambitious goals. Half of the apartment buildings we want to renovate by 2030 and 40% of our private houses also. It's an ambitious goal. If we reach not 50% but 40 or 45, then that's a good result also, but we need ambitious goals, right? We're working in Annelin with really big 9-story buildings right now, and in the process are creating a renovation public service so that people have an institution here in Tartu to turn to do all the stuff related to renovation that isn't construction itself. So planning, paperwork, construction surveillance, stuff like that. And we're working with the Ministry of Economy in another big project that hopes to renovate the whole Estonia, and we are acting as a pilot bed for the ministry here in Annelin. Yeah. If you look really far away and squint your eyes, it's like the Estonian flag, blue, black, and white. I like this photo very much. This is the type of building that we are working on right now, and a lot of Estonians, Tartu people live in this type of panel prefabricated buildings, and we're working on construction innovation with our colleagues from Tallinn Technical University and many others, so that if it was built by prefabricated elements, then it can be renovated by prefabricated elements, and to really scale up this market and widen it all over Annelin, all over Estonia in just a couple of years' time. Another point for better city is better mobility, safer streets, less pollution, less noise, more health, better mood, because usually physical activity puts you in a better mood, whether it's walking or cycling, you usually feel much better than when you started off. We do have quite ambitious goals. Our climate action plan says that we want to have bike lanes in city central area by 2024 and the citywide comprehensive bike cycling network by 2028. Since the agreement on our action plan, we've been working really hard on achieving this goal. Hopefully we'll get there by 2024. It has not been easy. But at the same time, we're also working on better connections with our neighboring municipalities. And overall goal for 2040 is to have equal mobility split over private car, cycling, walking, and public transportation. Yeah. But just quickly a few success stories. In 2019, we did basically a public transportation revolution here in Tartu with completely overhauled, absolutely data-based bus lines with new climate-neutral biogas buses, and the biogas is locally produced from agriculture waste. And we also introduced our electric bike share scheme. I'm sure everybody's already pretty familiar with it, but it was only 3 years ago. It's become like so much part of our everyday life that it seems like it's been here the whole time that I've been alive. So I just like to say that it is a success story, and at some point we tend to forget about it, take it for granted. And a better city, cooler, more climate resilient city, but I won't go into this because my dear colleague Anna-Liisa is there. She will be showing you many very beautiful pictures of Tartu after the coffee break, and talking more about biodiversity and just a cool city with cool pictures. So thanks for being here. I hope this gave you a bit of overview about Tartu, and I'm open for questions right now, but obviously during the coffee break as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kaspar. And personally, I do intend to be here in 50 years' time as well, so please don't give up in your mission. But again, if there are any questions, please raise your hand, and I'll send the microphone there. Who wants to be the icebreaker this time? Just show your hand. Come on. So there.
Thank you. Kaspar, this is not a question, it's more like a comment. I'd like to thank you for kind of bringing us all on the map and what is this all about when telling that if you just talk about climate change and all that, like I did, you'll see the results in 50 years. So, and what you actually need to do is to create a better city, better environment, and leave it for the children in a better shape than it's currently. And this is the message, and I think if we have this kind of message when we do the climate work, that it's better for the children and forget the climate and the just better environment for the children. It works better with the politicians. It works better with the mayors and whoever are in charge of the budgets. So I think this was a wonderful approach to the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments or questions? Again, just show your hands and hopefully I'll see you. So yes, please. The most active table so far.
Well, it is fascinating, and simply to bring back the business side again. And there's a Finnish company, Outotec. To my understanding, they were cleaning wastewaters of Zurich, 1.5 million people. And the end result, it's good business for them, as I said in my opening remarks, but they are producing off the wastewater by drying the concrete waste from the toilet waters. They're producing electricity, and the end result is electricity, clean water, and money for the company. So the question is, what happens to Tartu wastewaters? What do you do with them?
Well, wastewaters, Raimond maybe here is a better expert in that, but our wastewater company produces biogas for their own consumption, so to bring down energy cost and to provide us with better and more affordable service in the meantime.
Do we have one more question, or does Raimond want to comment on? No, then I think we'll have, yes, we're there, and then we'll take the final question from here.
Thank you, Kaspar. I'm Age from the University of Tartu, and thank you, Kari, as well for your fascinating presentation previously. So both of the cities seem to have very clear targets in reducing the carbon emissions, and you showed very nice statistics on the current emission budgets, and you have also, Kari, these climate budgets in place within the city. I'm wondering how much you actually know about the flows, like cross-municipality flows of carbon, or do you account for those flows as well? And if yes, so also how do you target the actions in order to mitigate the carbon emission that, for example, is coming from elsewhere, because just because of the flows of people, the flows of products that we use within the city, or like whether you monitor it, whether you have any action, or and how do you cooperate with your neighboring cities, but also with neighboring countries?
I think we are cooperating through our local Tartu municipalities. How is it in English? Association of Tartu municipalities. That's right. So they also have right now finishing their own climate actions analysis and plan. So coordinating through the association is something that we do. Unfortunately, I do not have that specific data so that I can tell you emissions specifically what are cross-border emissions. Not many systems are too much integrated over the border, but we can say most of the emissions, cross-border emissions, comes from traffic. I can tell you that much.
My name is Mirja Vehkaperä, and I'm Oulu, chair of the Oulu City Board. I have to mention that Oulu is the best place to cycle, actually, if you want to look best practices in Finland. We have more than 950 kilometers cycling paths, and we are the best place to cycle also in the winter time as well. But my question is the transport, which is very, very key issue if you talk about climate neutral cities. So what plans do you have more than just have the public transport with biogas buses? Wish you have electric buses in the future, or more cycling paths, or something else? What turns to people to move in a other way?
Well, as I mentioned, constructing the comprehensive cycling lane network throughout the city, that's definitely a priority. At the moment, we do have the gas buses, and the procurement, again, this is specific to Tartu and Estonia. We procure the service. We don't own the bus company itself. So at the moment, the contract goes to gas buses, and they will be operating until 2028-9. And I know my colleagues Raimond here and Janus back there are working on Hydrogen Valley project here in Tartu. So if everything goes well, and then hopefully we will have hydrogen buses from the next public transportation period from 2029 then. So that's a goal, but yes, I am very jealous of Oulu and your cycling lanes. I haven't visited, but I have seen many videos about it, and I'd just like to note that 20% of people cycle during the winter, right? More than 20. So that's more than people cycle in Barcelona during summertime.
Yeah.
Good. So
it's minus 30, 20, 30.
That's absolutely amazing.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
So now to reflect a little on what we've heard and discuss how to get the city governments and broader community to back the development goals, I'll have two deputy mayors join me here on the stage. From Tartu, Mr. Raimond Tamm, and returning to the stage from Tampere, Aleksi Janti. So I will be starting things off with a couple of questions, but then I'll be more than happy to pass the ball back to you, so you can ask whatever you would like to know more about. But to get things rolling, having now listened to these two presentations from each of the cities, having seen and already knowing some of the innovations that are taking place, what do you admire most about each other cities, and what do you see as wanting to learn most from each other cities for your own city? Let's start with Raimond.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, I was a bit late to the conference here, so I didn't hear most of the presentation from Tampere side. So I need to ask my colleagues later on what you have heard about here, because we had important city council commission meeting, and I had to actually speak about different important legislative acts what we are proposing for the city council. So that's why I didn't manage to come here earlier. So I need to find it out later on.
Aleksi, then.
It seems that we have similar challenges in both cities, and Kaspar mentioned that Tartu would like to be a cooler city. At least today, Tampere is pretty cool, but our target is like Tartu to be even cooler in future. Maybe that's the one point.
But let's then, Raimond, where do you think Tartu is doing the best at the moment in terms of green transition, and where do you think it's lagging the most?
Yeah, we are actually doing quite well at the municipal level. So we have done a lot of things in the recent past. But what we are really lagging behind is actually the collaboration with other sectors. So we need to much more work on involving households, involving apartment cooperatives, to involve private sector. That's actually what we are really willing to do, but so far I would say that we haven't done enough. So if we take the overall footstep regarding CO2 emissions, we basically, at the municipal level, what we directly can affect, we affect only 5% of the footprint. So 95% is expected to be decreased by the other sectors. So therefore, I can see it's a huge task for us.
In Kari's presentation, we heard that the environmental unit doesn't really do all the work, but rather every unit has to have its own plans where the environment is also involved. How well do you think, Raimond, that Tartu's units or different departments on the municipal level are all aligned in terms of their green goals, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you so much. I was a bit expecting for that. So I would say that you always have people in the organizations who are willing to make the change happen, and you always have people who are not so much eager or willing to make the change happen. So that's actually up to the organization culture. And what I can see as a main task here, it's to agree on the values, and to agree on the values for the first at the political level, so that we have a political willingness, and then it's much easier for the organization also to actually work every day and work for the same aims.
So the same question to you, Aleksi, how well aligned are the goals for these different units? I mean, in the presentation we heard that everyone in theory is pulling their weight, but in practice, is it working in that manner?
In big picture, it's working, but of course we have challenges, and those challenges are most likely like here in Tartu. We should have a strong political agreement or to implement all those targets that we have and all those single action points that we have on our roadmap. But there's quite a lot disagreements within for example, city council, and there is a different kind of point of views, and I'm pretty sure that mainly our civil servants are ready to make all those changes, but we have to work with our policymakers, and of course it's not enough if we manage to do everything as a city organization, but we need, as mentioned, our citizens and companies as well to implement all those plans.
How can we overcome these agreements? As Raimond mentioned, not everyone might be so eager to kind of reach these goals. People are different, they have their different backgrounds. How do we align these goals on a municipal level and between different departments?
Of course, co-creation is one main goal or a principle for get people and organization to own our targets or plans. And if like our city strategy actually was built up, we had 7 seminars and for example non-profit organization and companies were really involved in this process when we build up our strategy. And like all documents or all plans, we should do the same.
What about in Tartu?
Yeah, actually, what I can believe is that for the first we have to agree at the management board that we are working for the same aim, and then it's possible to actually or make all the others who are working for the organization to work for the same aims also. So that's the first step we have to make.
I would like to move on to the broader community. So, Aleksi, do you have the backing of the people in Tampere? I mean, how involved is the sort of average citizen? And I know it's a regressive term, but so to speak, how involved are our citizens in Tampere in what the city is trying to do, and how much backing do you feel from the citizenry?
I don't know what is average, because there is, I would say, some people who are against all changes, and then people who are, how to say, pro-changer, and they won't change, and they really do something and want to do something. But it's important that we have data, we have correct information, and so that people can make their own decision how to change their, for example, mobility habits or consumption habits and so on. Information is needed, and of course advertising and data, so that people know what really affects, and that's one thing, important thing.
I guess the next question is to the both of you. Do you have any best practices you can share about engaging the community and getting them involved at the right time?
Yeah, actually involvement of citizens, that's really important. And what we have done here in Tartu, we have tested really different tools. So we have, I would say, quite wonderful digital tools to engage people. We have practiced different methods. But before explaining those, let's say, more closely, I would like to say that engagement is not only up to the tools that you're using, it's up to the motivation of people to be engaged. And the motivation doesn't depend on the tools. So if the topic is not interesting for people, or it's actually, they are finding that it's not touching their everyday life. So they are really not devoting time to be engaged. So that's why for me the most critical issue is how to actually increase the motivation of people. And we have a lot of work to do here. For example, in case of climate change, I would say that most part of the society still doesn't really care about climate change. And we have to explain it much more kind of simple way at the local level, why it actually is important for people Not to say that CO2 emissions are really important, but people don't understand it. We have to explain it in much simple way. And that's an issue that we have to somehow solve to come to the normal people level and be ready to explain everything as simple as possible. But what we have done, yes, we have used, of course, different digital tools, normal meetings, face-to-face meetings. We have used also, of course, mass media to share our aims, to share our understandings, how we see things here in Tartu. And I feel that people much more understand that Tartu has a really ambitious green future plan. So that's what we have heard from other cities in Estonia. So that's what we have heard from our own citizens. But how to specifically make the change happen, that's up to the way people are acting and the companies are acting here in Tartu. And right now, I would say that especially when the prices of energy are that high, what they are right now, people are quite often saying that the climate change activities, let's say, that those are bringing along this high electricity price, high gas price, whatever. So that's a problem what we have to solve actually, to make people more understand what is actually behind all of those pricing issues and how actually green energy, the local production of energy, can improve our energy security, how it can actually improve our local supply of energy. So that's a lot of work to do still. And what we have, for example, tested this year, that's climate assembly. That's a very new method of engaging of people, so that we had dozens of local people working on their understanding what should be changed here in the city to make the city more environmental friendly or more people friendly. So we had a bunch of new ideas, those people who were very involved in this process, what they agreed on. So that was a very modern way how to engage people. We also have had, for example, hackathons to find out what really people are proposing to change, also at the prototype level. So there are many ways we have engaged people. So it's normally, let's say, all the available opportunities we are using.
What about civic engagement in Tampere?
This might be a bit funny example, but as some of you may know, we have a new tramway in Tampere. And before we decided to build it up, there was a lot of conversation and people were divided, support or against to new tramline. And of course, it happened within our city council as well. But when we decided to do it and the construction started, we informed our people really much and they had all needed information and companies as well. We had a lot of challenges, of course. In bigger picture, everything went smoothly. But for example, during this process, people could vote if the color of our tramline or those cars would be red or blue. And finally, around 25,000 citizens voted about the color. As I mentioned, it was a funny example, but people really were engaged to this process. And finally, even though we had this argue and people were divided, when the tram was up and running, we conducted research how people think about our tramline, and actually more than 80% of citizens say that it's at least a bit good thing that we have tramline. That's one example. And of course, in our budget, we have a small amount of money that people can vote how we use it. For example, for their safety or things like that. They can influence to that part of money in our budget. 2 examples.
So thank you for touching that issue of the tram. I know the last contentious issue in Tartu was involved the bike lanes, the plan for which was discarded due to some safety issues. I think we don't have enough time to go into detail here, but there was a civic uproar due to this plan being cancelled. So what did the city government learn from that in terms of engagement and communication and making plans?
Actually, what we learned, what was the main learning out of it, how to actually, if we have this kind of changes planned, how to actually make the procedure of this decision-making happen. That's actually the main learning. So you need to engage people, the decision-makers, from the very beginning, and you should really take good care of explaining everything in proper time, to explain why we are doing it, and then we need to agree at the decision-maker level that we will go for it. And if it's not agreed, then it will be really problematic at the end of the day.
So I know there are many experts in the room, so I would now we would be very happy if you would have some questions of your own for our speakers here. So again, please just show your hands, and we'll have the microphone there in a couple of seconds. So who wants to start things off? This is a very Estonian situation, by the way. No one likes to start, and usually when people start,
More Finnish.
we'll run out of time. And I figured that it might also be very Finnish. So, do we have yes, please?
Okay. Sorry for talking again. I have a question for both vice mayors. Both cities have plans that make the city grow or make major changes like the bike lanes or something else, new construction, densification of cities, etc. And at the same time, the cities both have very big environmental goals, and they are high up in the strategies. How do you find the optimum? We all know that asphalt and concrete is not good for the environment. But if you don't have built houses or if you don't pave roads, the cities won't grow. How do you tackle this dilemma? And
Carefully.
Definitely. And typically, until now, at least to my experience, it has been that the environmental things are the kind of nice thing to have, but it's the concrete and asphalt that pave the way, and you go as basically on their command. So, but now, much has changed during the past few years. So, has this raised any discussion in any of the cities? Thank you.
Actually, we are quite regularly having those discussions. So especially when we are working on the master plan, for example, for the city, we always have the discussions. How much we should keep green areas? Should we have any green areas covered with buildings in the future? That's the issue what we normally have in case of master plan on our tables. And I would say it's of course up to the people and how people are evaluating different issues in their life. So I would say that we are trying to keep a good balance here in Tartu, that the number of green areas is increasing, not decreasing. Because if you are, for example, taking a green area into use to cover it with buildings, then you can create another green area, and then you can expand actually the green area network still, despite of the fact that you had a park earlier and now you have buildings instead of it. So basically, I would say you always have a good balance if you are really considering different issues.
That's one of my favorite topics. I've several times said that if you look at highway from this distance, there is no green. But when you go up and look at bigger picture, you may have seen some green. And I hope that's true, that when growth is happening in cities, it let more nature as it has been. And in city, it's more important, of course, biodiversity. We need to take care of that as much as possible. But first of all, we need to take account the health of people and how happy life they can live in the environment where they live. And of course, there is a lot of restrictions when cities are building up. But we can take care of our nature better outside of city. But first of all, we should think about living of life of people in city. Of course, we need to think how we can manage stormwater, for example, and things like that. But those are first things in urban area. I know that many people disagree for that, but that's my strong opinion.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Yes, please. We have a hand there.
Thank you. Current security situation have led to discussion if green policy and the security are controversial, and certainly there is certain steps that we have made towards the green, for instance using gas instead of other electricity production means that is controversial to our security goals. At the other time there is solar panels in the city that make a lot of electricity users to also prosumers, so they produce and consume electricity at the same time. So how do you see the goals of, or what elements of the green approach should need to be reviewed in a light of new security situation all around us?
Actually, it's pretty clear that local energy production is helping to improve the energy security issue also. Because if you are not dependent on the natural gas from Russia, for example, and you are producing biogas locally, then it's much better situation in energy security case also. So what we have to do, we really have to increase the local energy production. The local production of electricity, the local production of biogas. That's our task to do, and we really have to work for it.
Almost nothing to add. I would say just that Russia doesn't export gas to Finland anymore. It's already stopped. But as we all know, energy as security issues are really closely connected in near background. But of course, in future we have to do things so that we are as independent as possible as Europe, and of course locally and in national level almost as well.
And just to add, actually the green energy, its position has improved quite a lot during the crisis, because if the price of fossil fuels is getting up, actually the competitiveness of green energy is increasing. So that's why it's really great momentum right now to make this change happen, to really go for this Green Deal.
So we have something to thank for Putin, not only that Finland joined to NATO, but also that he's boosting our green transition.
Do we have one more question? Yes, one final question from here in the front, please.
Thank you. My name is Heikki Konttori. I'm a member of City Board in Oulu. My question relates to the climate budgeting which Kari presented slightly a little bit earlier. Do you think there could be a way to put there's also some incomes? Because I'm pretty sure that some investors value so much the climate actions that if you don't make them, they don't invest. And that, I think it will be even more important in the future. So do you think that there is at least some way to show that actually this is also a good investment from the financial point of view? Thank you.
We try to do it visible. And for example, our tramway project is a good example of that. It was mainly city planning project as well, mobility project. But we have had a lot of investments because of that tram line. But of course, it's more difficult to show that all in our budget because they are speculative incomes. But of course, in background discussions, they are on the table. Maybe Kari can add, but that's not so simple.
Their value will not keep in time. But this has been true for the past 30 years, and California investors, I believe, were the first to require these LEED and other certificates from building construction. But as Aleksi said, when you have the city investments, it's a trickier one. How do you, because you don't typically get rid of your buildings and etc. But clearly there are possibilities, and there have been some discussions at our end that whether we should include them or not.
And we need to be aware of those issues and those point of views.
Just to make one other point regarding this issue. So if you're requesting for European Union funds to support your activities, you definitely are much better off if you are proposing those green transition activities. So that definitely impacts your budget also.
So we are now at the time where we have to end this discussion because the time is here for our coffee break for 20 minutes. So let's meet back here at midday exactly. And one more round of applause. And thank you to Raimond and Aleksi. So, welcome back, everyone. Let's begin. Completely on topic. Any basketball fans here? Oh, I'm almost the only one. Okay, there goes 5 minutes of stand-up about basketball. I know Tartu is very much a basketball city, and there are European Championship games going on at the moment. And although the Estonian men's national team didn't really make it out of the group stages, the Finnish team did. So I just wanted to say congratulations, and we will be rooting for you from now on. But back to topics almost as important in life as sports. We will now move on to session number 2, which will focus on livable cities. And much like in the first session, we will begin with a couple of presentations about the different topics. We will have 3 presentations this time, followed again by a discussion. And again, I hope you will have all your questions ready, because I will send the microphone to you after each of the speakers. But to begin things in session number 2, the first speaker I would like to invite here is Tartu City Government's landscape architect Anna-Liisa Unt, who will be talking about biodiversity.
Hi, welcome back. Kuidas ma enda pildi saan siia? Mitte enda pildi. Well, that's that. I've chosen to present to you a few street greening projects. I won't elaborate too much on our long-term bigger goals, because we've agreed on them globally anyway. And we know it: be kind to nature, support and create more habitats so that we could keep and support our biodiversity, diminish ground covers that are hard covers, replace them with street greening. That's all agreed upon. The main goal is actually to act according to these goals. So I'll present to you 5 street greening projects at first, and then one bigger, like a flagship project that's more general and that deals with the topic of biodiversity. So that's us. Tartu is fairly compact, so it makes our job easier. For me as a landscape architect, it's a good thing to see that around the city we don't have much industry and we don't have much cargo. So it's all good and green landscapes as a circle all around the city. I am also happy about the river as a corridor, and partly also with the railway. That's like the second corridor that runs parallel to the river. They actually do act as really good movement corridors and green corridors. We have really big parks within the city center as well. And we do have a really good mosaic of urban landscapes. We've got cemeteries within cities. We have a lot of historical housing districts that have small houses. They're very classy and they have big gardens. So the network of greenery is relatively good. We do have some issues that we need to focus on, of course. If you look at the general aerial image, there is a few spots within the green network that are more white and more grayish. This is industry and bigger parking lots for commercial districts. If we take a closer look at the city, then of course there's 2 issues that we really need to address. This image is an extract from a small tool called the Green Meter. It analyzes bits of the city, 100 times 100 meters. It analyzes as much databases as possible and also the ground cover of each space, and gives you like the element of greenery as the answer, to show you where you really need to focus your green deals on. So of course, around the river and around the canal, we're doing good. The housing districts, fairly good as well. But if the closer we move to like bigger roads, bigger parking lots, it gets more red and red. And so this is one of the bigger issues that we really need to address. We need more street greenery. And the second challenge that I will also elaborate on are city parks in the center. If you look at a few of them that show like diagonal roads. So unfortunately, most of Tartu's central parks are here due to the Second World War. They used to have buildings instead of them. Sadly, they were demolished, and in order to ensure like a better green environment really fast, they were just covered in grass, a few trees planted, but there wasn't really specific park projects made. So they do need a lot of improvements. So this is our second challenge. And this is how it looks like. It's just grass and it's just trees as opposed to something that's a good environment with all different elements, vertical elements, possibilities for leisure, sports, and so on, and also a more diverse ground cover. So this is what what we really must go for. So the image also on the last picture, this is the Tartu Nature Education Center. So if you're going for the walk later on, then it's right pretty much behind this house, so you can ask to see it. It's an amazing environment, and this is how it really should look like. Anyway, I've chosen 5 street projects. The donut in the center is where we're at right now, and the different red indications are the projects that I'm showing. The longer one connects the center to our recent Estonian National Museum. The one on the left at the railway station is the Central Station Square, and the big smile down below is a former railway corridor. So as I mentioned, we have these 2 lines which work fairly well, the river side and the railway side. It's good to move there. It has fairly good possibilities for walking spots and cycling. So now the railway corridor kind of connects those 2. So it had been abandoned for years and years. So it was a really, really good opportunity just to grab, because it's a free linear park. We don't need planting, we don't need landscaping, it's just there. So an amazing environment. It has forest berries, it has fruit trees. It's just anything that has landed and survived due to undermanagement, and that's amazing. So we covered the coarse gravel with recycled asphalt, and it's like an instant solution. And it looks really, really good. The second one that I need to point out is the front of our central station. There's the railway is behind the house. So imagine a huge plot of asphalt from house to house. This is what it was before. So there was just one really, really narrow passageway for the pedestrians. Imagine crossing that. It was simply horrible. So this is what it looked like just a few years ago. So the designers took from like an old photograph. So there used to be a public garden in front of the railway station. So they kind of used the same element, used as little asphalt for the traffic as possible. So it's an amazing oasis right now, and it's like one of the most important entrances to Tartu. So if maybe some of you arrived by train, then you might see it already. So the longer road connecting the center to the National Museum, it was just a road that really needed improvement because of its important position in town. So at some sections it didn't have sideways for pedestrians, and some of the street didn't exist at all. So it was a really, really simple thing to, again, diminish the roads for traffic, and we separated walkers from riders with a green line. So even if the width of the street did not really allow to do a lot of planting, even if it was 10 centimeters, we used local grasses and local species anyway, and it works really well. It survives despite the harsh conditions. Another one, a super simple little section of the street. It even doesn't hold a lot of importance. There's not a lot of traffic, but it's a historical environment. It's tradition that it didn't have sidewalks normally, historically. So just as it needed improvement, keeping the bigger goals in mind all the time, that we do need street greenery. It was just finished almost this year. Very, very little things, using asphalt only for cyclable surfaces, pavement for pedestrians. Again, using whatever is left behind for street greenery. And it's an amazing transformation that makes the historical district look completely different, and it looks really good. And the last one, it's also a very central factory complex that's been gradually turned into an event for culture, leisure, and commerce. So this is what it looked like before. So they've renovated the building bit by bit and giving it back to kind of the community bit by bit. So this is before anything happened. And the designers who had the task to manage the landscaping project also took a lot from the existing conditions, trying to use some green ground cover, but as it needs to house bigger events like markets, cinema, bigger parties, you can't have grass on the surfaces because it just wouldn't survive. So they used like a mixed pavement, using a lot of the trees that are already growing and also a lot of vertical greening, and it looks really good. They also use a lot of plants in boxes that you see at the background between the people. So some of the cafes grow their own herbs and whatnot. And planting in boxes, this is probably not a surprise or nothing novel for the Finns. Each kindergarten from this year on also now has their own planting boxes. So each group can grow their vegetables just to see how they grow. So we do try to get them young. And back to the factory, this is the front facade for the factory building. It has a sign that says, "Please do not mow." And this is due to a secret trooper who just kept showing up and mowing the grass, even though it was not wanted. We don't know who it was, so we needed to label it. Now it has stayed for a while. So it's a real challenge to be able to express that it is really educational, and that communication is actually very, very key to these changes. So this is why I'm going to present to you a project that's called Curated Biodiversity. Tartu will be a capital of culture in 2024, and it contains a lot of different events, different projects, and the biodiversity project is one of them. It's led by a separate NGO. It's not connected to Tartu city government. And it's led by 3 landscape architects, me and 2 of my good friends and colleagues. So we do act like a consultant for city government, just to carry the burden of explaining again, and getting the bad critique and getting threatened and insulted, because it's hard work. And this is where the local government really, really needs help. So the idea of the project is to turn Tartu into a really, really exemplary green pioneer, so that the environment where we're inviting our guests would look really good and would kind of meet the goals that we've set for ourselves. So we're using like 8 different steps or different methods to get to good results and to get our message heard. First one, super simple, just leave it. So we picked some parks from the center and just decided not to mow the grass in some of the spaces. we labeled the grasses and the different vines with species that have actually been growing inside the soil all the time, but we just don't know that it's there, because if we mow it, it just looks like plain grass. It's just like a green element, but it actually does house a lot of different species. And it did make a really big difference into some of the parks. We've experienced quite harsh droughts for the past 2 summers. So this is like a summer image. So in a few weeks, it became very, very dry. So the part with the longer grasses stayed green, and the parts that were right next to it that were mowed, they got really, really bad sunburn. So the kind of effect was very instantly visible. So in some places where you cannot possibly get really good expected results if you don't mow, because grass is normally, if it's recently planted, it has maybe 2 to 4 different grass species. If it grows long, it doesn't look really that impressive. So we've got a fast solution. If you normally know about pre-grown grass mats, then also it's possible to grow meadow mats. So we do that right across the border, really close to Tartu city. So every place, or a festival or an event, if it needs a meadow, we just bring it. So it's an instant solution. You don't need to be very patient for that. If you are patient, though, the third version is just to restart, which means just sowing seeds. So for that, you need to get rid of the existing grass cover. This is us 3 getting rid of the grass cover. So this is an urban meadow that's very close to the center. If you know Kaubamaja, there's Küüni Street, and there's us with our building right here. So you can see it pretty much the time when you exit the building. So we had a public event for the sowing. We also asked people to bring their own spring flower bulbs, so that every spring when the grasses are not high yet, you can always come and visit and see if you can find your personal flowers from the meadow. And it looks like a dream. This is the 2nd year of the meadow. You do need to be patient. I can't stress that enough. The first years, it doesn't look that good. This is 2nd year. It looks like a dream, but it's in fact reality. It looks really, really good. It's not the first time, though. This is a separate example, also quite close to the city center. It's a big traffic roundabout, so we're using the sowing method here and there, but patience. Another aspect, use what you have. So one of the parks that we're interested in is historical. It has a lot of overgrown old trees, but not so much other kind of ground cover. So we consulted with our ecologist friends who said that it has a lot of elements to become a good urban grove. So forests have different types, different growing types according to the plants, according to the soil conditions and the humidity. So this one looked a lot like an urban grove, but the ground is mowed all the time, so you don't really get a different layer apart from not really green cover because it's too dark, the leaves are too dense, and then the trunks of trees. So what we did is that we scanned some clear-cut forests from around Tartu and saved some undergrowth flowers and shrubbery, which would die anyway because of the new light conditions. So we replanted them into the garden with local communities. This is how it looks in spring. It is a little bit green because there's no leaves, and it's getting to look quite good already. We did have, as I mentioned, we have had 2 really, really dry summers. So also it needs a lot of patience, but imagine the same image with low-cut grass that has died anyway because it's dark. This looks quite good already. Next step, just leave it. We wanted to get a little bit more light into the same park. So we scanned some trees together with some dendrologists. We found a few that were prone to fall over anyway, as you can see from the image. So we had the trees taken down, and we just left the trunks, which has acted very, very well. You can also see one at the background. So you can just have a seat on it if you're in the forest, or it's really, really loved by children for climbing and also birds and insects. Another one is build a nest, because if you take down a tree, you're left with a bunch of branches. So we made a team with a sculptor who arranged the branches into beautiful piles, so that now they look like little nests in the park. It's disliked by a lot of people, as you can imagine, but we're keeping a cool and steady head about our goals. We need to provide habitats for different species. We're not backing down. Leave it. You know what this means. So it's the park, that's the urban grove, can be divided into two parts. So we're making the actions in one part and not doing, remaining the same actions in the second part, just to see, to compare the difference, so we don't also rake the leaves in fall. So this is what it does. The right-hand image is spring in the old part, the one that has the leaves taken away. Of course, looks super good. It's a mix of two spring flowers that live because there's no leaves. These are the first ones to start, and the park looks really, really green and amazing, as opposed to the second part, which is our project site. Not so good, but mid-May, it changes locations. It changes sites completely. It gets too dark in the old part. Everything dies and looks like this, and the part with the leaves gets the new spring flowers and the undergrowth and starts to look really good. So again, it's a matter of communication. There's a lot of complaints, but no backing down. And the last one, all aboard. So this is something to keep in mind all the time, that we do it for all of the species. We love the butterflies. We love the birds. It's an educational project for everyone. You still need to have some grass for picnics, elements to do sports with, places for land art, seating arrangements, everything because we're doing it for us all, so that Tartu would really, really show the way to be a good flagship example for everyone else. I'm just leaving you here with this picture of the Amazon. So this is Tartu, and we're relatively green. So my job is not really hazardous. It's not hard. It's not super challenging. We're doing really, really good. But there's just some things ahead of us that still need to be done. That's that.
So you kind of act as an anti-Nike, just do it, just leave it. Yeah. We have time for one question. Do we have someone who would like to ask something? Again, I'll send the microphone there in just a second. Raise your hand. Going once, going twice. Yes, please.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a little controversial question. Should we replace the high trees with the bushes in some parks?
Replace, I would say yes. There's a lot of discussion about Toomemägi, which is one of our most heritage based and the oldest ones that we have. It's a question of ground cover. If it gets too dark, it's impossible to make it more diverse. It is just some level, some grass level below the canopies. It is really dark. I believe that it's an unpopular opinion to take down trees, of course, but it needs to be renewed anyway. If you take it that way, that if we cut down trees, we don't leave an environment for our children, but if they're going to be falling over in 5 years anyway, then just replant it really fast to have a good environment for our children. So I say just go for it again.
So thank you very much once more.
Yep.
So it would be actually nice to finish here on the note that yes, we are doing well, but we will now be talking about, sadly, biodiversity loss and what to do about it. So speaking about actions on biodiversity loss, will be head of environmental protection from Tampere, Kati Skippari, and biodiversity expert Anni Nousiainen.
Right. Hello. Okay, thank you, Anna-Liisa. It was really inspiring talk you have. You have really wonderful, simple statements that are moved into practice, and I think if we can do it, we would copy it. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about, have this brief presentation on what we are doing in Tampere city for the biodiversity. And I think our presentation is more about the sort of planning. We are in the planning state, and you had this practical view, which was really nice. But we have been doing this biodiversity action plan for a couple of years, and Anni is here because I haven't been in the work. I just started in March this year in Tampere. But this picture is from one of our natural parks in Tampere, and it's really nice place. All right. So maybe a little reminder of why this biodiversity is important, and why are we talking about it in this seminar about climate change. And well, it has been, we are also nowadays facing accelerating biodiversity loss in all its forms, and it's like the biodiversity of ecosystems, habitats, species, and genetic variation is declining all over the world due to human activities and global warming. And rapidly warming climate affects biodiversity and the health of ecosystems by changing the environment too quickly for the sensitive ecosystems to adapt. So we need biodiversity in order to adapt to this changing climate. On the other hand, the healthy and resilient ecosystems maintain carbon cycle and help to prevent climate change by taking the CO2 effectively from the atmosphere into the forests, soil, and ocean flora. So that is really important that we have healthy ecosystems. And in order to fight climate change, we need all these circular economies and stuff, but we also need healthy environment, healthy ecosystems to absorb the CO2 we are producing in the air. And that's why we need to take biodiversity into account in all our interactions with nature. Tampere is really green city of lakes and ridges, and the fifth of the city surface area is composed of green areas. And these include not only constructed parks, but we also have forest and open areas. And we have had a long history on traditional nature conservation, And we have been protecting and conserving valuable natural areas with endangered species and habitat types. And the first publication of the valuable nature sites in Tampere was published in 1994. And nowadays we have 1,200 hectares of nature conservation areas in Tampere, which are protected by nature conservation law. And also from the city-owned forest, which is 7,500 hectares, only 15% is managed as a regular commercial forest. So the rest are in some form of protection or another, so our restricted use. And we had this analysis made by Finnish Environment Institute, who conducted that in Tampere forests, and according to that analysis, 79% of the forests owned by the city of Tampere can be classified to the forest of high importance to biodiversity. So that's a lot of forest. And as the city of Tampere is growing rapidly, we have the threat to biodiversity in Tampere, so we are replacing natural environment with concrete buildings and roads and services to people, and maybe forgetting the biodiversity in the making of it. So I think we need to have a wider perspective in order to protect not only the valuable natural areas, but also general biodiversity and healthy living environments. So the city of Tampere accepted the Biodiversity Action Plan 2030 in June 2000, so this June, this year, with a more holistic approach on biodiversity than before. And like this climate roadmap, the biodiversity action has been prepared together with different sectors inside the city. So we have involved all the different sectors in it, and saying that you must do it as well, because it's in the city strategy as well as the climate change. And also the residents, communities, and other interest groups have been involved in the planning. Our biodiversity action plan consists of 6 main goals and 112 different concrete measures to protect and enhance biodiversity in all the activities of the city, from urban planning to land use to park and forest management. So I'm just going to go briefly to the goals that we have made for this plan, and Anni is then going to tell you a little bit more about the specifics of the plan. So the first goal is that urban nature, meaning the nature around us, is diverse and adaptable to climate change. And then the second goal is that endangered habitat types and species are protected. And third, ecological networks are functional and comprehensive. So that means that we need to have networks all over the city. Like in Tartu, you had this railroad and river, and well, we have a railroad, but it's still operational, so I don't think we can have it green, very green. And the state of water bodies needs to be good, and their organisms diverse and vibrant. And elimination of invasive species is effective and efficient. And the residents and communities of Tampere know the value of nature around them and want to work toward protecting it. So we have sort of voluntary work. We are giving funds and aids for local people so they can do voluntary work protecting nature. Usually, maybe the elimination of invasive species. And I think the basis of protecting biodiversity in a city area is I think the first is to protect the hotspots of natural values. So we have certain areas that are more valuable than other areas when you're talking about nature values. But then we have to have this connectivity so the species can spread from one place to another, and we have the green and blue connectivity in the city area. And then thirdly, we have to have best practices in all our doings, like construction, maintenance, forest management, and so forth. So that, like this example in this Tartu presentation, you have this, you're leaving the leaves in the ground, and you are leaving the grass a little bit longer, and it's really important for the soil organisms that you are. So maybe you think that it's only for the different plants that can grow, but the soil is also important. So if you leave the leaves in the ground, the soil is really, really happy and diverse. All right, but maybe Anni can continue from this one.
Yes, thank you. I'll just show, this is the main big bones of our plan, and there's a lot of things embedded in it. Our goals and objectives for the plan they're not very specific, they're more qualitative, and that's the way we want it to be, because that's the main goal. Like, we can throw in percentages, but these are the main objectives that we want to have. And I just want to show you this so that you can see how expansive the work on biodiversity is. And this was created much like the plan of our carbon neutrality plan. So it was done together with different departments, because it's not just the Parks Department and it's not just the Environmental Department who does the work. I mean, the Environmental Department, like, we prepare areas for traditional conservation, but how about all the rest? And then there's Parks Department who maintain parks. But what about all the rest? We have roads, we have infrastructure, we have stormwater management, we have so many different things. Tampere is a big landowner, and of course the city has wants to expand and get more residents, and that brings in more construction, and the city is one leader in that development. So how do we take biodiversity into account in that aspect? And there's so many things embedded in the plan, and I think one of the main things is that we have, or one of the big things is that we have to, because biodiversity is not maintained only in the environmental department, it's all the rest. Like, we do very little. Like, most the other areas are responsible for what is actually done in the environment, and how the roads are constructed, and what kind of plants they plant there. And I think one of the main things is that our housing and land policy, which is a paper that guides how Tampere as a landowner wants to, there's many things embedded, but also how Tampere as a landowner accounts for biodiversity while expanding, which is, I think, is a very big thing. And also, like, stormwater management plans, how do we put that biodiversity in those? And I'll just zoom in on the enriching our urban nature, the one small sector, which actually was like what we want to do, what Anna-Liisa just showed that you have already done. Like that was very inspirational. I'm like very, very, very excited. Like I want to go home and tell everyone about these very amazing projects. And well, I mean, that's what you've done. And that's what we want to do. But also, in addition to what the city does on city lands, there's also, we implement the green factor in detailed planning, so that also residential buildings and new building areas have more green in them. And it also takes into account stormwater management, so that we have more biodiversity, better stormwater management in the process. And then also one of the big things that we are trying to study is how do we expand that green factor to our comprehensive planning or the general plan of the city, so that there's a little bit, that there's more of a guide on how to do the smaller things. And then we have the city guideline for implementing green roofs, which is it's a work in process, should be done by the end of the year. But I don't have nice pictures like Anna-Liisa had. She like wish we will have those in a few years, even more than we do now. I mean, it's not like we are starting from scratch. There's been plans and people have done different things to enhance biodiversity for years, but this is the first time that all those actions are put into one framework, so that actually when someone wants to know what Tampere is doing for biodiversity, they have that guide that says what we're going to do in all those different sectors. But I think that was it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, and hopefully next time we can have this meeting in the form of a photo exhibition. But do we have any questions? We have time for, I think, one, if there is a quick hand somewhere. Yes, please.
As you mentioned, the green roofs, as the Tampere is the main landowner and the housing builder, are the new houses built with the green roofs, the grass and the meadows on the roof?
Not currently. Some of them are, and it's linked to the green factor we are implementing in the detailed planning, so that if the area is dense enough and then there's some sort of natural values or sensitive watersheds or something nearby, then you have to implement the green factor. And if it's very densely built and there's not much ground cover, so you can't plant trees or things like that, then one way to fill the green factor is to build a green roof. So at the moment, there's like no specific guidelines that you have to build a green roof in certain cases or not, but it kind of depends on, like, it's left to the constructor to find the way how they fill the green factor. And there's many different things in that, but currently no. And what we've learned, like we only implemented the green factor in 2020. So there's like the constructions that have been like in the planning phase during that time, they are now just starting to be built up. So we don't have lots of experience in how much green roofs the green factor will produce yet, but in a few years we'll see. But what we've seen so far is that it's not that many. They will try, like the constructors will find other ways to fill the green factor instead of the green roofs.
So thank you once again. And for our final presentation today, we will be hearing about the sustainable transport policies. And I'd like you to help me welcome traffic system planner Sanna Avaska.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Nice to meet you all. And we will start with a short video.
Tampere tunnetaan tekemisen kaupunkina ja meidän kaupunkistrategiassa onkin painopisteitä, jotka liittyy kestävään kehitykseen. Tampereen liikkumisen haasteet liittyy kaupungin kasvuun. Kaupungin keskusta sijaitsee kapealla kannaksella, joten meillä ei ole liikaa tilaa. Ja tietysti aina valmiissa kaupunkirakenteessa katutilan tarpeet on ehkä suuremmat kuin rakennusten välistä oikeasti on. Eli sen tyyppiset haasteet. Tietysti sitten se, että meillä on kunnianhimoiset tavoitteet olla hiilineutraali vuonna 2030, mikä tarkoittaa sitä, että kun meidän tällä hetkellä kestävien kulkutapojen kävelyn, pyöräilyn, joukkoliikenteen kulkutapaosuus on alle 60%, niin vuoteen 2030 mennessä sen tulisi olla peräti 69%. Tuohon Tampereen kestävän liikkumisen suunnitelmaan liittyen, niin me tullaan kehittämään jatkossa meidän raitiotietä, joka aloitti viime vuonna ensimmäisellä osuudella liikennöintinsä. Tällä hetkellä suunnittelupöydällä on kolmas vaihe ja toinen vaihe on rakentumassa.
Tampereella on tehty pyöräliikenteen eteen viime vuosina paljon. On parannettu väyliä, tehty uusia väyliä aluekeskuksista Tampereen keskustaan ja muita yhteyksiä lisätty. Sen lisäksi pyöräpysäköintiä on parannettu ja sitten seuraaville vuosille on kunnianhimoisia suunnitelmia, joita lähdetään toteuttamaan. Lisäksi Tampereella on kehitetty yhteistyössä yksityisten yrittäjien kanssa erilaisia sähköpyörien lainausmahdollisuuksia ja haluttu sitten tämmöisiin muuttuviin pyöräilytarpeisiinkin tarjota ratkaisuja.
Joukkoliikennepalvelusta saadaan entistä houkuttelevampi sillä, että me ollaan yhä lähempänä sitä ihmisen arkea. Me ollaan mukana niissä ratkaisuissa, minne ollaan matkalla. Ei pelkästään vaan tarjota joukkoliikennematkaa, vaan tarjotaan myös se koko palvelu. Ollaan mukana vaikka jääkiekko-ottelulipussa, eli tarjotaan se pääsy joko töihin, opiskeluihin tai sitten niihin vapaa-ajan kohteisiin. Joukkoliikennettä tehdään myös tosi paljon yhdessä asukkaiden kanssa. Ja kun me kerätään sieltä paljon sitä tietoa siitä, että mitkä on ne tarpeet, niin me tehdään myös semmoista joukkoliikennettä, joka oikeasti vastaa siihen. Eli semmoisessa tiiviissä vuorovaikutuksessa me tehdään semmoista joukkoliikennettä, joka varmasti palvelee.
Yes, I wanted to show you so that you can get an impression and introduction of how is mobility in Tampere. Actually, how many of you have been in Tampere? Yeah, some at least. Yes, and this video was because we won the SUMP Sustainable Urban Mobility Planning Prize this spring, and we are of course very proud of that and happy that our sustainable mobility, which have been taking huge steps last years, have also recognized on European level. And as Aleksi Jäntti said on the video, that Tampere is a city of action, and what comes to mobility, this is now more than true, because as you know, the tram transport started last year on the first 2 lines, and we are building the next line and planning the regional lines after that. Beside, we of course have the backbone of bus trunk lines and bus network regionally. What happened last year also was that a local commuter train started to operate. It's still quite small scale, but maybe in the future we have some more local trains as well. And what we also have is new cycling possibilities. We always can learn from Oulu and other cities, but we have been doing a lot for that and also introduced city bikes last year. And of course, private providers offer scooters and micro-mobility services. And what is important, of course, we are doing investments and infrastructure, but what is very important is that at the same time we are doing mobility management. We are making changes in people's mobility habits, and that doesn't happen alone with a new infrastructure. And that is really much in the center of sustainable urban mobility plan. If you are not familiar with this European Commission concept of mobility planning, you can maybe Google it and know more about that. Yes, in this presentation, I will very shortly introduce our SUMP plan with 6 target areas or focus areas that are carbon neutral, which we have been talking quite a lot today already, then efficient, equal, safe, active, and environmentally responsible. And these are challenges may all cities are facing, and I will introduce how these topics are linked with mobility in Tampere and with transport, traffic. And I will give some examples of actions, those that are ongoing or planned future actions. And of course, these targets are not separate from each other. They are pretty much linked. And this is quite a human-centered viewpoint, how these are linked with each other, for example, equality and safety. So when speaking about mobility, this we have been heard quite many times already today, also when heard this from Tartu and then from Tampere. This is the challenge we are all sharing, how to transfer from car traffic to sustainable traffic modes. So from now or already some years ago, the share of sustainable modes was 55%, and in 10 years it should be 69%. So it's quite drastic change we need to do. It's challenging, and it might sound not that a huge difference with numbers, but at the same time we need to remember that the city is growing and new people are moving to Tampere, and there will be more and more trips all the time. That needs to be sustainable. So carbon neutrality is the main targets we are having, and it's in our city papers underlined there very strongly. We also, as Kari earlier presented, we have this carbon neutral roadmap with mobility, many mobility related actions. And then we have this sustainable urban mobility plan, SUMP, which is not only for climate, but the climate is playing a central role in that also. And what is the challenge is that you see in the right corner, you see the pillars. That the blue ones, the total sum of our emissions is going down, but the traffic part, the red ones are up. The curve is not that positive, so there is a lot to do. And of course, as a city, we are not working alone. We need to work with the companies, with the citizens, residents, other stakeholder groups. So some examples of actions that are taking place right now. One is introducing the clean fuels, which is a topic our public transport operators are working right now. For example, this year, about 30 diesel buses were replaced by e-buses. And this climate is really much related to longer trips, for example, work trips from other municipalities to Tampere, because Tampere is the center of the region, and there are longer car trips that are taking place, and that has a huge climate effect. And those are the ones we are working with, for example, improving the feeder traffic and developing the trip chains from living areas to the local trains, for example. Then another target is efficiency. To be efficient, it means space, it means time, it means money. And it was as our deputy mayor Aleksi Jäntti said on the video, that Tampere is the city center is quite narrow. So even if we didn't have any climate targets, we need to do something because there is no more space for. So our transport needs to be space efficient anyway. And what is important to understand is that each mode of transport has its own role in the transport system. Also, what we are working for is that with the city planning and with the traffic planning is that the objectives need to be the starting point for the planning. So we need to have the previous picture, which shows the number of trips as a starting point, as the situation, a starting situation for our planning. And some examples of action is, of course, different kind of smart solutions to cut down the motorized traffic, the number of car traffic. Then implementing mobility hubs that connect different modes of mobility together. And then different ways of mobility management to do more with less. So if we have an investment, how we get all out of it, what we have been doing. Then traffic safety, of course, is a very important starting point for traffic planning, and quite often we think that safety of children and seniors shows the situation of the traffic safety in the city, and it's a good way of measure it. One important target could be that every child has the right to independent and safe school trip, and how we can guarantee that. It could mean as an action like car-free school environments, for example. And of course, accessibility in different ways. What comes to, for example, our new tram is a very good example of that. Calming down the traffic speeds in residential areas is also something Tampere is doing all the time, and almost all residential areas already have the restrictions for restriction of 30 kilometers per hour. And this traffic safety is very much linked with equality also, and social sustainability in many ways. So it's important to learn how we recognize the mobility difference different people have, for example, what comes to age and gender and income level and living area and these kinds of factors, and how we assessment our decisions, how we assessment them, how they affect different peoples, whose mobility it's affecting, for example. And our target is that we offer mobility possibilities to all with a reasonable price, time and effort. And this is important to also to note that more than 40% of households in Tampere are car-free, so it's not any minor group of students, or of course it's also that, but it's a growing group of households that are car-free, and how we offer possibilities with reasonable price, effort and time for those. Then also activity and active transport system, mobility system is one viewpoint, is because at best, of course, the transport system creates movement, and this is really important target, because as we all know, we are sitting too much and moving too less. If you want to stand up, please feel free. And also in Tampere, the price of immobility is huge. It's so huge that it's difficult to understand numbers. And the aim is that the short distances, let's say something less than 5 kilometers, would be trips made by your own activity, and there is a lot of, if I want to be positive, I would say there are a lot of possibilities, because now the change starts already after 2 kilometers. Most of the trips are made by car. So there are many possibilities for change. And of course, e-bikes that are getting popular, at least in Finland, I think in Estonia as well, change the kilometer limit, I think, because it makes more easier to take the work trip, for example, 10 kilometers, and also cycle during the winter time. It's ease the hills and winter conditions. And actions we are taking is, of course, improving the infrastructure for cycling and walking, and doing separate lines for both. For example, when building the tram, there are a lot of improvements for cycling as well. And then doing mobility management, which means communication and marketing, together with employers, employees and workplaces. And this is a very important target group, because the trips between homes and workplaces play a central role. And then very practical way of action is offer different kind of tryouts. For example, e-bike tryouts or child trolley tryouts. So that the idea is that if you try once and you like it, then you continue it after that. So working together with people and so. Then last but not least is, of course, healthy environment and all mobility, how mobility is linked with air quality, with biodiversity, as we just heard, and with noise. And this is also the challenge because the city is growing, and how we guarantee the quiet areas, green spaces, and urban nature. And one example of action is our main street, Hämeenkatu, that goes inside the city center. It's now only for public transport. Tram goes there, and then for active modes of mobility. And one example is also, practical example is timing of spring cleaning. So when we are doing the winter maintenance during the winter, how we guarantee that the air quality wouldn't drop that much during the spring. But I don't go that deep in that topic because actually Kati and Anni presented it, the environment topic, quite well. Yes, thank you from my side. I'm really happy to join the tour afterwards to see what's actual with mobility in Tartu as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, we have time for one question, if someone has one quickly, and I see a hand.
Hello, my name is Jani Koivuniemi. I'm from Tampere, and I'm an honorary consul of Estonia. And if you can take the slide where you had the 2016 compared to, I think it was 2030. How is the way of traffic changing? Yeah. This slide. I've been following the electric vehicle development since 2011, when I bought the first Fisker Karma in US. So I have a quite good knowledge on that, and also following the studies and research. So can you explain this when you told that the amount of private cars needs to be reduced to get to the CO2 kind of plans in 2030. So can you open a bit of that?
Yeah, well, not number of cars, but car trips. There is actually, I don't know if Kari remember what is the number of e-cars we are calculating. Is it 30%? So it's the same estimating that Finland generally is doing, which now seems that it's too optimistic. But of course, there is also quite a lot of unsureness on this topic because of the full prices and everything. So there is, but it might be a bit optimistic. But that is behind these numbers to showing how many car trips we need to reduce.
Yeah, but have you read the last study of Carnegie Mellon University in the US about electric cars compared to public transportation, the CO2 in the long run?
I haven't read that. So
I really recommend to read that.
Okay, thank you.
I like to mention that the supporting the electric vehicle network is very important to get the more cars to traffic. For example, in some of the cities, for example in Germany, there are free parking. In Helsinki, there is a reduced parking fees. So I would really like to see also that in Tampere, and also it would be very important for city to take time and think about it, where to zone the electric vehicle charging stations. Of course, in the future, the cars will generate the electricity and the power by themselves from a certain form. But any case, in a transition, we have a fuel stations in the zoning, but we should also have the electric vehicle charging stations, because the cabling and all that, it's very important to get to the right location.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. Now the city is not playing a very, very central role. Building up the charging infrastructure is more done by private companies and operators. Yes.
Of course, and that's important that they are private. I really think that's the right way to go. But the main goal is to kind of set the rules and try to find the locations to put these charging stations.
So we're going to have to move on from here.
Yep.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Sanna. So to round off the second session, we're going to have a brief discussion on livable cities, and I would like to join me here on the stage, Age Baum from the Tartu University Mobility Lab, and back on the stage, Kari Kankala from Tampere's Environment and Development Unit. We haven't been as sustainable with time during the second session as we were during the first, so we're going to have to be quite quick, but I'd like to focus on the future, because we've heard quite a lot on what we are doing already, and here I would like to ask mostly about what we should do next. But I'm going to start us off with something that Raimond mentioned, which I think is very important. It's that some of the terminology associated with green transition has become a sort of cloud of buzzwords, and many people don't really even understand what's behind those words or why it's important. So we have to explain it and keep on explaining it. So what I'd like to ask from you is, do we even have a consensus in your cities on what is a livable city, and how much of a consensus and common understanding is there? What makes a city livable? So, Age, I think I will start with you.
Yeah, thank you. For this question, I'm sure we all define these kind of buzzwords from our own positions very often, and based on our own experiences and our interests and our fields of responsibility. So this seems to be the case also with the word sustainability, for example, or the circular economy, as we heard earlier. But livability, so sure, it is about the future of our lives in the city. So it will be for everyone, for all the species of human nature and the ecological species as well, so that we can live there in the future not in a too complex way, but in a simple manner to be resilient, so that it's not fully pre-planned and we are not robots in this urban area, but we actually can live normal, healthy life in our cities also in the future, which is also good for the planet.
Kind of totally agree with the fact that there are buzzwords everywhere, whether it's a livable city, whether it's a sustainable city, whether it's a meaningful city, etc. Take a buzzword and create a definition, but basically, I think Age mentioned the elements that are there. That there are elements that in all of these elements that put forward something better than what is currently sustaining the environment and the living environment better for the future, and then you start getting into, well, I don't know if I can call them details, but whether it's biodiversity you are working on, or whether it's a climate mitigation you're working on, or whether it's a climate adaptation you're working on, or whether it's a segregation you're working on, etc. And I think I'm going back to to Kaspar's presentation, when he kind of pulled it all together, that we need to be working on all of these, and then basically doesn't mean what you call it.
We've centered on good examples from Tartu and Tampere today, and we've heard that both of the cities are actually doing quite well in terms of green transition. But where do you look for inspiration today? What are the like real role models in terms of cities which are real pioneers at the moment?
Clearly, there are pioneers and there could be role models in for cities, but I think I believe that we learn more from examples, get ideas, etc. The basic idea is not all that difficult theoretically. Try to make something better than it is today. So when you get wonderful ideas like Anni got from Anna-Liisa about the biodiversity and how it's done here in Tartu, we'll take it home and we'll talk with our greenery people and who are in charge of that. So I think the way, at least I've learned, is from examples from here and there, and then basically adapting them to your own environment and your own city, and something works, something doesn't.
Indeed, there is no ready-made cookbook with recipes for all the cities in the world with different population sizes and the spatial locations, cultural backgrounds, etc. So we indeed need to learn from each other's experiences, and the events like today, the one today is also a perfect event for getting inspirations and taking them then back home. We need to co-create the solutions which fit for the local community and the local social context, cultural context, climatic or ecological context, the best. But of course, the more good examples there are fit for our size of the city, the functionality of the city, the population of the city, of course, the faster the changes on a global scale occur, so that we can also divide the cities as early adapters or late majority, so that how to work with the late majority where the most of the impacts finally occur. I think that is quite crucial.
And if I may add, one of the things that I find, and this is a personal opinion, important for the cities, as the cities are more or less production machines. We produce all kinds of services, whether they are infrastructure services or whether it's education, social services or whatever. It's a production machine. It's not a development organization, more or less. And but in many cities, you have development organizations, the universities. And in these novel things that we are attacking, take climate-related things and how to proceed and how to bring them down to regional construction and people's lives, etc. Work with the universities, talk with the research organizations, get involved with the research projects or ask them to come and tell you, because they are there on the front line. The cities are never there on the front line, but the universities are. So I think that's a very good tool for the cities.
Talking about early adoption and looking into the future, in terms of the near future, maybe the next 10 or 15 years, what do you see as the main trends or something that's definitely going to happen, or you'd really like to see happen in terms of city planning and livability in cities?
There are several fronts in this field, like aim-based and operational levels are there, but indeed the understanding of the urgency of biodiversity loss, for example, and how related it is also to the climate change challenges that we face. So integrating greenery and biodiversity on multiple levels into the city fabric. So I think that is one of the places where we really need to acknowledge the urgency. And then in relation to that, also the sustainable urban mobility is one very clear action area. But on an operational level, I see that integrated planning on the city level or within city governments, not in silos, so that so that the departments of one single city government do not work in their silos, but also that different authorities, state and local institutions, do not work in the silos, but share the policies and then also negotiate the practical pathways. So I think that is really crucial as well.
And I believe that regardless of the kind of put in policies and kind of aspirations that the cities may have, if we are working on these issues like biodiversity, climate, and all these compelling issues that we currently are dealing with and are facing with, then out of those, at least to my mind, comes out a better environment, a living environment, etc. So it's what is good for the nature, what is good for climate, is also good for people, and you basically get an environment that is more sustainable than the one that we've been building for the past 50 years, and maybe more sustainable also for our children.
Thank you very much for that. The time is pushing us mercilessly, but I'd really love to use the last couple of minutes for your questions. So if there are any, something that would maybe summarize the day in a way, or something that has kind of tickled you and kept tickling you, then this is the final opportunity to ask away. So please use that and show your hands. Yes.
Thank you. I know that Tartu is in Estonia so-called front runner. This is the only city that is a member of this mission, cities mission from Estonia. But in Finland, you are much more lucky. I see that there is several cities in the mission. And how would you say about Tampere? Are you also a front runner, or it is kind of average city in Finland already is doing so much and is kind of having all the plans and also implementation? And the second part of the question: how you are supported by the central government? What is do they help you? How they support you? Do you see the support from state?
Okay, thank you. We typically compare ourselves among the 6 largest cities, the capital region, Turku, Oulu, and Tampere, and then kind of try to see if someone is better than the other. And what I've been seeing and saying is that in these environmental issues, one city is advancing fast in track A, the other one is faster in, say, circular economy or something else. So basically, we are all moving the same issues forward, but just depending on the emphases of different cities, some move faster in certain areas and some are slow. So take circular economy. I believe I mentioned in my talk that we are clearly the last one of the 6 largest cities that has been getting into the game. It doesn't necessarily mean that there hasn't been actions taking place in the city region, but we just haven't gotten our act together on that. And then in some issues like the climate budgeting, for example, we're good. The other part of, the city government, national government. The national government doesn't really provide us any special financial aid for doing what we do. What we find, though, which is valuable and which is also supporting us and providing us with insights into the future, is that we easily get into the tables with the ministries in different issues and so on. And so we take construction criteria. We work. The 6 larger cities are working closely together with the Ministry of Environment on that, etc. We're working on circular economy issues with the Ministry of Environment and so on. So it's more non-physical aid we get. One could call it tapping on the back, but it's more than that. So we could say that the collaboration with the national government is good, and we benefit from that. So there are some program instruments that also have financial aids, and they are divided to, I believe, 15 larger city regions currently. So, but most of the funding and all that is done by the cities themselves.
Is there one more quick question? But really shortly, please. Last chance. If not, then what I heard was that Tartu is a front runner, so congratulations for that. So what will happen now? We will go on to our lunch break, where hopefully you can continue the discussions. It'll be a 1-hour break. The lunch will be served right outside in the hallway. You can bring the food back here in this room as well and eat here. But after an hour's time, so 2:30 sharp, session 3 will start. It will consist of a site visits. So Miss Andra Asser will be waiting for you outside the house, so right in front of the front door on the first floor. So please be there on time, 2:30, session 3. Here, I'd really like to say thank you to Age and Kari, and to all our other speakers and presenters. So thank you very much.